to Tate, as always, from the gem along the Colorado River, Laughlin, Nevada, bringing you yet another edition of your favorite bowling show, Bowling Evolved. Joining me, as always, is one of the premier left-handers in PBA Tour history, one of the single greatest left-handers I've actually ever seen in my life, the one and only Eric Forkel. Eric, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How about you, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm having a real good night. Things are going well. We got some great news for the show tonight as far as our tournament goes. Some great news and a phenomenal guest tonight, but we do have some bad news, unfortunately. Mr. Mark Roth, who we did advertise on being on the show last week, will not be here tonight. Unfortunately, technical difficulties have sidelined that for now. Eric, I know you're disappointed. I know you had some great stories and stuff that you wanted to bring up with Mark, but hopefully we can get to that next week.
Oh, anytime you get a chance to speak to a legend, basically, an innovator, a Hall of Famer. I may have left out a few things, but sadly we couldn't get him this week, but we will definitely try in the near future.
Absolutely. But even though we couldn't get a Hall of Famer on the lanes, we do have, in my estimation, a Hall of Famer of the media bowling scene. We have a great guest joining us this week. He is the president, CEO, and owner of InsideBowling.com. One of the, in my opinion, pioneers of digital media as far as putting bowling into the mainstream as far as internet and broadcasting goes, the one and only Mike Flanagan. Mike, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, guys, happy to be here. I had no idea I was still in Mark Roth's shoes. I'll certainly do what I can. I guess I need to move left on the approach and rev it up a little bit here during the show, huh?
That's it. You better add about 3 or 4 more steps to your approach, too.
That's true. I'll do what I can do. I'm happy to be here, though, guys.
Okay.
Well, Mike, let me first just say that, again, from our perspective, Inside Bowling was one of the shows that kind of inspired a lot of different podcasts and broadcasting on the internet to go forth with bowling. And let me ask you, how did Inside Bowling come about to begin with? How did you come up with the concept, and, what is it doing today?
Well, actually, it kind of came up just, talking with some guys at League, and we had a message board back in the day revolving around our St. Louis Masters Traveling League, where the guys would go on there. It's a draft league, so after the draft, people would talk about, who didn't get drafted or how it was all political or how somebody should have got picked, and there was a lot of smack talking going on throughout the season, ripping on certain people's games, because you could post under an alias, and a lot of people in the St. Louis area went there and looked at this, and it created a lot of buzz, and it was, before Facebook and things like that. So it was kind of like, when you're in a fantasy football league and you're posting in a message board, it was a lot of smack talk going on about our league, but the public could see it as well. And that kind of folded, and I always thought if you could come up with something like that on a level for all of the leagues and all the stuff in the St. Louis area, it would be a cool place to have one central location for the bowlers to go to. And then I thought, it might be a useful tool besides just this fun little thing for people to go read funny stories about each other, but maybe bowling centers might want to post about their tournaments, or 9-pin no-taps are large in our area, or just what's going on in the bowling scene in St. Louis. So we started it. We got it up. It was just a message board. And then suddenly it went from being this fun little hobby thing that I thought might be cute and fun to something that was actually becoming quite a resource and a tool for the bowling centers. And I quickly had to go from being the alias of Slammy Global, as I post under, to actually more of a professional person that needed to start, getting rid of the riffraff and actually having some credibility. So the thing's really evolved. And then as it has evolved, and I got hooked up with an unbelievable webmaster in Brian Burkhart, who owned bowlspot.com, all of a sudden things just started spiraling where he would say, hey, we can do this if you want. And I'm like, really? Well, let's do it. And then we started bringing on a lot of volunteers and people that wanted to get involved, and we've just kind of dabbled in a little bit of everything.
Well, Inside Bowling definitely is now one of the most recognized names in bowling as far as media and tournaments and production go. What are some of the other things that you're running as far as Inside Bowling go? What kind of tournaments? I know that you were doing some work with Extra Frame. Tell us about some of those activities.
Well, St. Louis is in the past been known as a city that's a big bowling city. And over the last, 15 years or so, we've seen the Hall of Fame move away. We've seen a lot of lane beds go away. We've seen the scores go through the roof. Our patterns have become China. The proprietors have made the lanes easier and easier. And a lot of our folks that bowl locally that are the who's who in our market go to the USBC tournament, and they fall flat on their face. You don't see many St. Louis talents out on the tour anymore. It used to be the Masters Traveling League in St. Louis had 7 or 8 touring players in the league, such as Rowdy Morrow, Ray Bluth, Nelson Burton Jr., a plethora of people, Ron Williams. There were so many great talents that came out of St. Louis and actually made it on the professional tour. And, of course, I didn't mention Who Do You Think You Are, I Am in that equation, but he actually is bowling the league again now. So there was all this bowling talent, and it's so sad to see what it's become in our city. I mean, we have some great bowlers, don't get me wrong, but to see them not have success on a national level on the more difficult lane conditions, I thought, you know what, we need to have a tournament in St. Louis on something difficult, and we need to attract bowlers from throughout the country, but also have our local talent have something to participate in, that they don't have to pay a hotel fee and that they can bowl locally. So, therefore, the inaugural InsideBowling.com Open Tournament was born, and I promoted it. I got a lot of help. I got a lot of help from Pete Weber. I got a lot of help from people on Facebook that I've met, and they've seen me do things. And Lindenwood University students were a huge help to putting Inside Bowling on the map and drawing entries for the first InsideBowling.com Open. The tournament, I designed my own pattern. I tested it. It's nothing like you see on tour. It's not a cheetah. It's not a scorpion. It was my own creation. It was almost 40 milliliters of oil on a beat-up wood surface with a 2-to-2 stripe at the end of it. We had a right-hander shoot 300 in qualifying. We had a left-hander shoot 300 in qualifying. We had the tournament leader was Anthony Lacaz after qualifying, and he averaged 222. We had a very, very solid field. We had guys like P.J. Haggerty, Mike Wolf, Pete Weber, David O'Sullivan, George Gohagen, Jake Peters, who went on to win the tournament. It was a very, very solid field. We had 91 entries, and we had a very successful first-year tournament. The second year, the tournament increased to 116 entries. We drew from over 18 states, and the tournament is continuing to grow, and I can tell you guys right now that it is going to be April 27th and 28th, 2013, at Tropicana Lanes, where there used to be a PBA tour stop, a national tour stop.
There sure was.
Storm Bowling Products is the title sponsor of the event. They are donating $5,000 to the prize fund. Every bowler this year is going to get a high-performance bowling ball or whatever storm ball they choose, included in the entry fee. The entry fee is going to be $260. First place is going to be guaranteed $7,777 with a 1-in-5 cash ratio. We're going to have a Friday night doubles tournament and a Sunday second chance tournament as well. So that tournament is going to be unbelievable. It's in a 52-lane bowling center where it's had a lot of support and a lot of help from Storm Bowling Products. We're going to live stream the thing the entire weekend. And I think we're going to have a lot of big names in that one. But, even the league bowlers should bowl that one because they're getting a high-performance ball for about what they would pay for it anyway in a pro shop.
Well, it definitely sounds like you are, revolutionizing the way some people look at tournament bowling. And I know that obviously you've come under the glance of the PBA as well. Again, I had mentioned before that you're doing work with Extra Frame. How did that come about?
Well, I'm a firm believer in our industry right now with everyone working together. And, at times I hear people rip on the PBA or I hear, a lot of things rumbling out in the field. But for the PBA to look at me and say, we'd like to have this guy come help us and not see me as a conflict of interest is a huge, huge thing, I think, for the PBA to do. Do you know that they moved a tournament for me? John Weber and Rich Weber from the Midwest region Found out that my tournament this year was going to be the 27th, 28th of April in 2013, and they actually moved a regional to help work with the weekend that I've already picked. And then to have me come out and be part of Extra Frame and not view me as a competitor but welcome me into the family, that's a really big statement with the PBA wanting to work with other entities to be successful. So, yeah, I got to go out and work with Extra Frame, which, it's a huge learning curve because, they are the best of the best. They are the professionals. They do have the best equipment. They have guidelines, and they're a paid service, so there's a lot of added pressure. But Mike J. Laneside, Jason Thomas, and then the higher-ups, Jeff Reese, Tom Clark, Mr. Von Kruger and his staff that do such a great job. They welcomed me in. They let me be a part of it. It was a lot of long hours, and I learned a lot. I got a lot of positive feedback, but I went back and I watched everything that I did, and obviously you can always get better, and I want to get better, and hopefully they'll have me back to do more in the future.
Well, it definitely sounds like a positive experience. I know Eric and I were discussing before our experience up at the World Series when they invited us up as a media source too, and I have to agree, it does seem the PBA has embraced this new generation of bowling media with open arms. Let me ask you this too. I mean, do you think that this new generation of bowling media is going to be the wave of the future, or do you think there still is a lot of merit with the print as well?
Well, that's a good question. I think that print and text I put that together as the same thing. So whether you're reading it on a phone or on a piece of paper, are two different things. I think because bowling is a little old school, and I think that there's a lot of senior leagues throughout the country that have been watching bowling forever, I think they like to pick up that newspaper that's sitting in the bowling center and read about what's going on. So to all the news publications that are out there that are still in print, kudos to them. And I do still think there's going to be a market for it in bowling, probably longer than most other sports. But at the same time, all of this Facebook and Twitter, my God, we were sitting there, Mike J. was actually getting information from the players by just watching their Twitter feeds, knowing what balls they used, what they shot on what lanes. When Extra Frame is using Twitter as a tool to tell us what's going on in the bowling center, that's a very powerful tool. And Bowler's Journal just recently, it's a major headline that they just did their first online version of the magazine. I think it's great because, it doesn't cost anything. You're on the same playing field as the NFL. It doesn't cost you anything to get on Twitter. So if Aaron Rodgers tweets about, what size his jersey is, Pete Weber could tweet about how he drilled his, berserk that he shot 855 with out of the gate at the World Series. So, I think that's a really, really positive thing for the PBA to be able to use, and for, USBC, Matt Cannizzaro, he's got his own USBC National Tournament Open Championships, group or fan page on Facebook, and he lets everybody know what's going on, like where is a good place to eat. He asks for feedback. I think last year, the people got to decide on what pairs and what groups should be live streamed. How awesome is that,
Well, let me ask you this. I'll throw this one out to Eric. Eric, are we going to see you have your Twitter up and running and you telling the listeners and readers what you're throwing in between games?
Twitter? I can't even spell Twitter. You want me to post those kind of things? No, you know what? I'm still stuck in the dark ages. My wife keeps trying to get me into the new ages, and I like the old newspaper stuff myself. But hey, you know what? It's a fast food situation. Everything is on the go. People want instant information, and obviously that's the direction that everyone is going. And it's good to see that the PBA is embracing the resources that Mike is able to give them.
Very much so. Now, Mike, let me ask you this. I know I would listen to several of the Inside Bowling shows. What's been happening with that? I haven't seen a new one in quite a while.
Yeah, well, Doug Lakey and I started up the show, and Doug is the ladies' man, and the more, I guess the more movie star-esque type guy, I guess I could say. Although with my appearance on Extra Frame, I'm moving up in the world for sure. No, but all kidding aside, Doug has taken a job with Cry Distributing, which is an Anheuser-Busch distributor in the St. Louis area. He's very, very enthralled with his job right now, and he's very, very busy with work. So he doesn't necessarily have the time weekly to come out and do so. So since I have so many things going on, that show is kind of taking a back seat. And I got to be honest, we're really good friends with Tim Berg and Joey Serrar, who do above180.com. We support what they do. And now you guys have your show, and I've listened to many, many of your shows. I listened to Scott Norton's last week. So, there's a lot of that going on right now, and I don't feel that we have to do it, although people did enjoy our shows and people asked for it. My goal sometime in the next 2 to 3 months, which should happen sooner than later, is I think I'm just going to go to a podcast where I do an interview each week and throw it up. And it may not even be weekly. It may be sporadically where I interview some folks and talk a little bowling. But they'll probably be 15, 20-minute shows, more similar to what Tim and Joe do with above180.com.
Well, I'll say one thing, Mike, and I'm sure Eric will vouch for me on this one. Anytime you want to sit in and offer an opinion, I know that our forum is open to you.
I appreciate that. And Eric, with your tweeting, bro, do you text at all, or?
Oh, I text. Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
My wife does. My wife does the tweeting, but I'm a bit of a texaholic, so I'm a good texter.
well, all you got to do is just get a smartphone. I'm sure you probably already have one, and just set up the little Twitter app on your phone, and it's just like texting to the world. So I don't think it's as tough as you think it may be, and I'm sure. I mean, obviously, I watched you bowl a lot, Eric, and we discussed this when we were at the Senior U.S. Open together. The success that you had with the ceramic core bowling balls and things like that when I was a youngster, or at least a teenage bowler. Not trying to date you here or anything, but you were one of my favorite lefties to watch. I
appreciate it, and I appreciate it, and you know what? I am what I am, so day away.
Yeah, well, your Twitter feeds, people would definitely want to know how you're getting the ball off the two board with about 10 feet left on the lane, because you kind of made that famous, don't you?
Well, I did have my time, every now and then I'll pull up some of the old, I was telling Dustin about this, pull up some of the old TV shows back in the day, obviously, early 90s, mid-90s, and it is a little different than nowadays, that's for sure, and, the game has definitely changed. I'm sure you've noticed that, especially at the World Series with the two-handed players and the amount of speed that the players use pretty much today on the regular tour. To me, it's changed quite a bit, at least in my eye. Maybe it's because I spend a lot of time bowling against guys over 50 now. Everything seems at a much slower pace. And then when you go to the World Series of bowling, you see everybody throwing the ball 20, 21 miles an hour. It's just it's like a culture shock. At least that's one thing I noticed that this past World Series of bowling.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. The volume that's put out on the lanes, although I thought they did a great job at the World Series this year with pattern equality as far as lefties and righties and who came off of A squad and who came off of B squad. I thought it was a very, very solid job the PBA did. But, you talk about the game changing and innovating. One of the things that stands out to me, Eric, and correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't you the first person to ever wear sunglasses on a TV telecast?
You know what? I'd like to say yes, but that's probably a no. I want to think back in the 70s. I think Ernie Schlegel had on some funky glasses when he was doing his bicentennial kid thing. And I want to say that he was the actual first ever person to wear some funky colored shades on TV. But I definitely know I was the first person ever to wear them outdoors, and I was the first person ever to win an outdoor tournament. So I know for a fact those are true.
I specifically remember that telecast because I said, what is he wearing? Like, I couldn't believe you had sunglasses on. So I was wondering.
I got a great story on that.
Well, do you have a riff with Pete Weber? Like, he kind of copied you. I mean, the similar style glasses.
Well, you know what? And like I said, that whole thing, that came out of nowhere. What it was, if you recall, it was 75 degrees, bluebird sky, The sun was unbelievably bright. It was a beautiful day. It was just great. And when we went down for the practice prior to the show, the glare off the synthetic lane was unbelievable. And I just remembered squinting for that half hour of practice session. And Keith, who worked on the truck and who ran the locker room and was in charge at that time, he was sitting there watching me practice, and he says, "Here, why don't you put my glasses on, and if you're comfortable, you can just go ahead and wear them." So he gave them to me. There were some Ray-Bans. I put them on, and all of a sudden the lane just completely changed. In other words, I felt like I was bowling indoors. I didn't see any glare. I could relax. I didn't have to squint. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to wear them. And that's the only reason why I wore them. I hadn't planned on wearing them. It's just because the glare was so bad. And, Mazda, I remember before the show, Mazda joked with me, and I said, hey, it's easier for me to see the lane, so I'm going to wear them. And that's how it started. And then they had a few more shows outdoors, one with the regular tour and then one with the seniors, and a lot of the guys wore sunglasses. And then, heck, I even wore them indoors because Drew Carey thought it was a cool idea. He happened to be sitting there on that show, and he said, hey, you know what? Hey, you won the tournament. You should wear the glasses every time you make a TV show. And that's exactly what I did. And then once I was done out there, I noticed then Weber started doing it, and I gave him some grief over it and, kind of made a joke out of it. But obviously he's Pete Weber. He's going to carry it in a much different way than me. And you know what? It works perfect for him. And obviously to this day he still wears them, and the rest is history.
It's too bad they can't create a pair of glasses, guys, that allowed you to see the UV coating on the oil, so you would see how it moved through the glasses.
Now that would be cool. Now that would be interesting. Like I said, it opened up definitely a can of worms there, and it just like I said, it came out of nowhere. And when I did wear them indoors, a few other times I did, and a few other shows I made, it worked great because, as you know, when they have the show indoors, they still have all the lights. And that's the reason why Pete wears them, I'm sure. Besides being cool with them on, I'm sure it helps him to get rid of some of the glare. And then it becomes a habit. Then it becomes something that you're just comfortable having on when you bowl on TV. And that's kind of like your thing. It's your shtick. And obviously Pete carries it off extremely well because he can. He's flamboyant enough. And, I didn't do it to be flamboyant. I just did it out of necessity. But then when Drew Carey suggested to me to wear them, he said, why don't you wear them all the time? I said, well, maybe I will. And then one of the shows I made after that happened to be in Cleveland. And once again, Drew Carey happened to be there promoting something. And he was there on the show, and he said, you better wear your shades. And I did. And so, it was inspired by Drew Carey would probably be the best way to go with this.
Okay. Well, I'm going to, as we're closing in on our end of our first segment here, Mike, I do want to ask one very important question, and this is something that Eric and I have talked about quite a bit, but I kind of want to get your take on it. We've talked about how bowling has changed, and we obviously have a little bit here too, but if you could look at bowling as a whole, do you think the sport has evolved in a positive way or a negative way as far as scoring and the way things have changed?
Wow, loaded question. Put me under the gun here. I absolutely hate what league bowling has become. I believe it's boring, going in and bowling a night of league, and you get 2 points if you win the first game, 2 points if you win the second game, 2 points if you win the third game, and 1 point for total. The 7-point typical system is boring. After a few weeks, you have no chance. You get bored. It sucks. You've got several bowlers in the league that averaging well over 220 that have no business averaging over 220 because they bought hook in a box. The rev rates are getting less and less, and the ball speeds are going up and up. Do I think that that's a good thing for bowling? Heck no. I can't stand it. I don't like it at all. I understand it, though. I completely understand why it's happening. I can't say that if I was a proprietor trying to make a living in an environment where the scores are high and the flat gutters are getting raised that I would make a statement and come out and say I'm going to put my family's bread and butter on the line and I'm going to put out sport patterns for all my leagues and go bankrupt either. So I don't know what the answer is. I certainly don't know that. I do think that associations should put a premium on awards and recognizing people that do choose to bowl on tougher conditions. Here in St. Louis, I recommended this year the Bowler of the Year. The criteria is based on how many 300s and 800s you have. It's not on what you average in a sport league. And then I believe that there should be some sort of an award established or some sort of things to recognize people that choose to do that. I think the USBC should step up and with the little funds that they have, because nobody will pass a USBC card price increase of $5, which I also think is absolutely absurd. I believe that you should be rewarded highly with a better prize if you do something on tougher conditions, and people will want to do that. So as it's evolved, I guess I would say that I'm not real happy with league play and what the conditions have become. I'm not upset at the ball manufacturers for creating balls that hook more or better technology. I'm not upset at them for that because that's been going on for quite a long time. It's not like that's changed. So to answer your question, no, I don't really like it. But I do think that if PBA patterns, if sport bowling, and things like that, and the college movement of bowling on tougher patterns wouldn't have happened, we'd be in a lot worse shape than we're in right now. So as bad as it is, it could be worse, in my opinion.
Well, that's definitely a very intriguing way to look at it, and I think a lot of our listeners would agree with that. But we want to take this opportunity and say, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not looked at Mike Flanagan's website, it is InsideBowling.com. Go there, check it out, see everything that Inside Bowling has been involved with. It really is a phenomenal experience, a revolution in the digital media of the bowling world. And, Mike, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. And I obviously listen every week and pay attention to what's happening out there in the world of bowling. And your guys' show is definitely one that I put in my favorite places and try to tune into every week.
Hey, Mike, I appreciate. Well, obviously, Justin and I both appreciate it, and I couldn't agree with you more about the current state of the bowling. We talked about it many a time. I mean, I really believe you. Obviously, you have a recreational side of the game, and you do have a professional or a sports side of the game. One of our pet questions that Dustin always likes to fire on me is, what do you consider bowling? I always like to consider bowling a very difficult game. A lot of people look at it as a sport. I think there's two sides of it. I mean, obviously, when you have leagues and you have your recreational patterns or conditions, that to me is not much of a sport. That's kind of like maybe a game. And then you've got the other side of it, which is professional or the collegiate stuff where they bowl in all these very challenging conditions. That definitely is a sport. So I just think there's two sides to our game now more than ever. And you hit it on the head. The proprietors have got to do what they got to do to keep people coming in the building. And putting up very difficult conditions, for the most part, is going to drive people away. You can't take the candy. You can't take the candy away from people anymore. It's been out there for too long. And you just have to, I think at least, you just have to find the balance between the recreational side and obviously the higher-end professional or highly skilled amateur side. And both worlds have to coexist because, bowling centers, they survive not by the professional or the high-end amateur stuff. They survive by the recreational bowling. That's what keeps the bowling centers open. But, And again, we talk about this all the time. And at the World Series, Dustin, when he conducted his interviews, he talked to a lot of the top players, and he would always ask that question at the end. And, most of them did not agree with me. A few of them did, and that's fine. It's just my opinion. I personally just have a hard time calling this thing a sport when there is so much recreational stuff going on that's just ridiculous. That, to me, is not a sport. It's just a recreational game. If everything was like we said, if everything was, sport conditions and extremely challenging and if that environment was across the board everywhere you went, and people would respect you if you averaged 210 or 215 or even 220, well, then you'd have to call it a sport across the board. But I just think because of the current state and I think that's the reason why I have a tendency of calling it a challenging game. And that likes to get me in trouble with some people, but, so be it.
I'll give you an interesting thought on that really quick. A lot of people go to Dave & Buster's, and the reason why the kids go to Dave & Buster's is they play those games where they get tickets that they get to redeem for prizes. And I feel like everyone is a kid at heart, and bowlers like to gamble and things like that as well. So I believe those two things kind of match up, okay?
Sure.
So if the USBC made a statement and said, we're going to take away the rings for 300s, and we're going to recognize them differently. We're not going to give them as much credit. But what we're going to do is we're going to anybody that bowls, something on a sport condition or a sport-compliant condition, and we're going to give you, say $500 cash. Or, I don't know what the number would be. I haven't looked at a budget or anything recently, but you know what I'm saying. If they found a way that you could actually win better prizes, just like you go to Dave & Buster's, I think something like that could possibly work. And if proprietors and some way, somehow, sponsorship dollars could be brought in. I don't know how to do that, but it's just a theory. If a proprietor said, for instance, if you bowl in a sport league in my center and you bowl 300 or you average over 220 on whatever pattern, just pick one, okay? Shark. You have a chance to win this car that's parked in the lobby. For all of you that bowl on the house condition and you shoot 300. We're not going to give you anything. But, you shot 300, you get the pride of it. Those sorts of things do make people at least stop for a minute and say, what would I rather bowl? Would I rather have a chance at the car in this terrible economy? Or the chance that I shot 300 and nobody even clapped for me at league because I was the 15th this season? So there are ways to manipulate people's minds to wanting to do things. It's just everyone thinking outside the box to get that to happen.
Oh, I totally agree, and that's, like I said, and I like that, I kind of make the analogy to candy. If you give candy to a baby and they enjoy the candy, and then you pull that candy away, well, they're going to cry, they're going to be upset, and they're not going to, they're going to go, in other words, they're going to go do something else. It's no longer fun. It would take work. It would take practice, and that's what it should be, but that's not the direction that it's gone. And it's not really the bowling ball company's fault, like you said, because they're just trying to make a living and selling. They're just trying to sell the best products they can, like in any other sport or game. So you can't. People like to always blame the ball companies, but it's not the ball companies at all. I never, and I've worked for many different ball companies through the years, and whether it was Columbia or Storm Products, it's not their fault. They're just doing their best job they can to give people equipment to use. As you know, and I'm sure you know this, if you go out with these modern technological balls, the balls that are fantastic, and you put out that U.S. Open condition, that 1-to-1 ratio or that 2-to-1 ratio, nobody's averaging 220, 230. I mean, like the best bowlers in the world might average 220, but most of the field averages between 2-0, 180, 190, 210, and these are with the most modern technology you can come out with. So is it really the balls or is it really the patterns? I believe it's what we bowl on. I think the balls help, but the balls, if the patterns are so difficult, I don't think the balls do you any favors at all.
Pete Weber won his 5th U.S. Open, averaging 208 to make the TV show.
Exactly, and he's one of the greatest bowlers of all time. You're talking about high-end talent. Now, just if you look at it in that way, how come that equipment on those conditions you're not averaging 230, 240? Because that environment's not there. And, so how can, people like to blame the equipment? I don't blame the equipment at all. The equipment has gotten more and more, I don't want to say complicated, but it's gotten more and more technological driven. And even on somewhat normal conditions, if you don't use the right equipment, you can't keep up with everyone else. You don't carry enough. You can't stay in the game. Even though par might be 230, 240, you're shooting 220s and you're nowhere. So there's that part of the game that we've talked about on this show as well that has, even though the conditions are very soft, it's like they give you the pocket. Here's the pocket. Now you got to figure out what ball is going to allow you to carry and keep up with everyone else or try to beat everyone else, because hitting the pocket is not the challenge. The challenge is, how do I carry consistently to make any kind of money at all? That, to me, is a different type of challenge in the, what I call, recreational environment, opposed to the professional or more challenging environment. There you have to, number one, hit the pocket. That's a challenge. And then number two, you better have a ball that's going to allow you to carry when you do get to the pocket. So it just complicates the issue a little bit more. That, to me, is what has changed through the years, especially in the professional ranks and in the good high amateur ranks. That's what has changed. And, you see it in St. Louis. I see it here in Las Vegas. 220, 225, it's not much of a game anymore. You're looking at 230s, 240s. Now you're in the hunt. And when you average 250, maybe you got the lead a little bit. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, that is what it has become, and the scoring pace, I would like to see it reduced. And we're starting that charge in St. Louis with our St. Louis Masters League. We are putting out our own patterns each week. We were lowering the pace, and it wasn't unanimous, but we got a majority of the vote, and we're turning some heads and making some things happen here locally. I got my inside bowling tournament, and those folks at Kegel, they are very, very smart. Those folks at Kegel have a lot of things they're working on as well to do the same thing. And, a company like Kegel, I don't know if you noticed or not, but they came out with their first household product. It's called Fission. We need Kegel to come out with the next Windex, because if they create a product like Windex and they hit a home run and they rake in all the money outside of the bowling industry, I know for a fact that company would dump some of that money back into the industry, and they could take some risks and do some really big things when it comes to lane conditioning and putting out tournaments with top prizes. So I'm rooting for Kegel every night. When I say my prayers for all the people that have cancer and all those bad things, I also say a prayer for Kegel to hit a home run with a household cleaning product.
Yeah, that's terrific, because, and I agree with you, because I remember when I was out on tour, when Kegel first started doing the lanes out there, when they got involved, it definitely changed the picture out there big time in the early 2000s. They created a whole new environment out there, and I know John Davis, he cares. He's there to sell a product, but he really believes in what they do, and it's no surprise that they do lanes all over the world. They do lanes overseas for all the big tournaments over there, and they're really funny. One of the big guys there at Kegel, Gus Falgene. I don't know if you know Gus, but
I know Gus. He helps me with my patterns. A very nice man.
Yeah. He's a good guy, and I knew him from Southern California when he would do lanes in the valley where I bowled, and he would put out patterns for us to bowl on, and then he hated the house shots and Gus was a decent bowler. He hated the house shots because he thought it was stupid, and then he would create some patterns for us to bowl on, and of course we thought that was stupid because it was so darn difficult. And then he tried to explain to us how this was happening and why, and the more educated you got, especially if you're into it, you're a professional. At that time, I was still bowling for a living. Once you learn more and more, and you can realize the science behind it is really unbelievable, the topographies and all these different things, you really start to appreciate what goes on and how temperamental this environment is. And they do great things at Kegel, and they really are the leader. They're the leaders of this whole thing, and I always would hope that they would we bowl on some Kegel patterns here in Vegas in some of the tournaments we bowl, and it's always, 210, 215. That's about the average that wins. That's right. That's a great average, and if you average 220, you're going to win the tournament. You're going to win the tournament.
Yep. That's perfect.
And Eric, I was going to say the one thing that I always remember is when we had Del Warren on the show, and he made one statement that kind of stuck with me. And, Mike, I'm sure you'll agree with this as well. I mean, he had said point blank that it's not the proprietor's responsibility, it's not the ball manufacturer's responsibility to maintain and regulate lane conditions. It falls on the associations. And, that's who is supposed to be regulating the sport of bowling. And I use that word very loosely, sport of bowling. It does fall back on the association. The sport of bowling needs the associations to step up and say, you know what? This is what's going on. This is what can and can't go out. And I think that's what's going to start legitimizing what bowling should be.
Yeah,
I agree.
Unfortunately, there's a problem there. And that problem is, let's just say, for instance, Bob's Bowling Center the association comes out and sees the flat gutters are way out of specs, and there's a lot of other issues with the bowling center in regards to the pin decks being coated with too much urethane or whatever those things may be. Not very smart when it comes to that stuff, but whatever those problems are. So it shouldn't pass, okay? And this bowling center has 2,400 league bowlers, most honor scores in the city, and they make a statement and they say, all right, we are not going to pass this bowling center. All right, we're making the statement. Well, guess what? Guess how much revenue they just lost out on? And now their association office can't be open anymore because that bowling center with 2,400 league bowlers was 1/3 of their entire association. So what do you do in a situation like that? That's what's so tough. That's what makes it so bad right now.
Oh, and there's no doubt, and I don't disagree with that. I mean, I worked in a bowling center here in Laughlin for several years as a tournament coordinator, and there's no doubt in my mind, and Eric, I'm sure you saw it in the bowling centers you were in. I mean, bowling centers will do what they can to generate business, and we all know that an association that is generating their only real source of income from the bowlers is not going to put that foot down. I agree with that. The problem is, and Mike, as you said, you got to find that line where, the association can have that source of income, be it from a kegel, be it from something else, that could have the backing in order to do that. Because I think until USBC has an independent financial situation, you won't see them crack down the way they need to help make bowling legitimate again.
No, especially the way, how the amount of league bowlers have diminished through the years. Even in the high-scoring environment, that doesn't necessarily keep people bowling. People get into other things. They have different ideas what they want to do. It's not as economically good as it used to be. We live in definitely more difficult times financially. So league bowlers are quitting, and it's not because the lanes are getting harder. And I don't think it's because the lanes are getting easier. I think they're just quitting because it's not what it used to be, like nothing else is. Maybe the good leagues aren't around anymore. The money is not what it used to be, and the people just aren't interested like they used to be. It's definitely turned into a recreation. Obviously, open play is still at least in this area, open play is still very good. The birthday parties are killing them. They do great there. So the recreational side of the game has definitely not been hurt at all. It's the structured leagues and the guys, people who try to run tournaments. That's where the trouble is. And I'm sure there's a slew of ideas and reasons why that has happened. But making the lanes more challenging, of course, a proprietor, that's the last thing they want to do, because they don't want to drive whatever they have left. They don't want to drive them away. That's just the sad part.
What's amazing is the Brunswick centers, they were called BRC, Brunswick Recreational Centers, but at the same time, you got to give them a lot of props because their mechanics are held to a very high standard, and they were told that their lanes have to be within specs. They have to be legal. And if you go into most of the Brunswick centers throughout the country, not all of them, but a majority of them, those mechanics are trying to win Golden Wrench Awards, and they have their lanes within specs. So mostly throughout the United States, you will find that a majority of the Brunswick centers have less honor scores compared to centers that are cheating, that are raising their flat gutters because they don't think it's that important. So you kind of got to tip your cap to the folks at Brunswick for making sure that the lanes are within specifications, and I think it all starts there. Then it goes to lane conditions. So, just getting lanes in spec would be a good starting point. And how about this? What if the BPAA came forward to the proprietors and said, we are not going to release your Pepsi rebate checks from the BPAA, which are thousands upon thousands of dollars per center usually, until you fax us over your report of all of your lanes passing within specs. I mean, those are ways to do it.
Sure, why not?
Get them in the pocketbook, absolutely.
There are outside-of-the-box ways that you can make a difference. The problem is who's going to actually, consider that a high priority on their desk full of stuff when they're already working shorthanded because revenues continue to decrease and you're asked to work twice as long a days And oh, by the way, when you go to lunch, make sure you tweet about the new cool thing we got coming out, because that's important today too. So it's all relative. It's all a mess, but there are good people still in this industry like yourselves, and a lot of the good folks that work for these organizations that start with letters and end with letters. And I know there's a lot of people trying real hard out there. So.
Well, that's all we can do is, I mean, obviously Dustin and I, for the amount of people who listen to us, we try to give our opinions on this, and Dustin's father happens to be a proprietor. He runs a bowling center, so he has firsthand knowledge of this whole scenario. And I don't know what the answer is, but if the right people keep getting involved, like obviously the people at Kegel and the smart people at Brunswick, maybe this thing will turn around in that regard. But the bottom line is you got to get people to bowl. You have to get people to want to bowl. You got to cultivate the junior bowling, because those are the bowlers of the future. As great as the guys are out on tour now, you still got to look to the future, and that's the junior bowlers. So hopefully that'll just keep pushing this thing up the hill until finally somebody gets it over the top and get to the top of the mountain.
There is a lot of synergy right now in the game of bowling. You see the BPAA and the USBC under one roof in Arlington with the Hall of Fame. You see the PBA inviting a guy like Mike Flanagan from InsideBowling.com to come out and be a part of the Extra Frame crew. You see guys like yourself asking another guy who does an internet radio show to be a guest on your show. So I do think that everybody beginning to come together can do nothing but good.
We'd like to hope that. We'd like to, and that's what we're kind of hoping for in our own little small way. Trying to make a little difference. We're just trying to make a little difference, right, Dustin?
We're all about the unity here in the bowling world. Listen to the Bowling Evolved podcast, and our special guest tonight, the one and only Mike Flanagan from InsideBowling.com, kind of been going over what he's been doing with Inside Bowling. And before we come back to Mike, I just want to make one quick announcement here. We did talk about last week on the show that Bowling Evolved will be getting involved with running our own tournament here, and we do finally have an announcement. Bowling Evolved will be running the Laughlin Cup. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the Laughlin Cup will be on February 2nd, 2013, and will act as a satellite tournament for the one and only Proprietors Cup run by Billy Eisolt. And, Eric, I got to say right now, I think the Laughlin Cup is going to turn out to be one heck of an event.
Yeah, Dustin, I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully it'll set a precedent, and it will be something that will be a yearly thing, and people will come out and support it, and obviously, get that trip to go back and bowl the main event, which I'm sure any bowler would love to go do, because that's quite the experience from what I've seen.
Absolutely. The Proprietors Cup is definitely one big tournament, a lot of prize money, a lot of participation there. The Laughlin Cup will be basically a regional version of that event. We will be offering $500 and a guaranteed entry into the event. Again, that's $500 and a guaranteed entry into the event. We will have more information on this tournament on our website at bowlingevolved.com here coming up probably here within the next week. So we're recording on a Tuesday, so we'll be by Friday of this week. As a matter of fact, we will have that information up. So again, if you guys get a chance to come out to Laughlin in February, on February 2nd, we will be running the Laughlin Cup. And let's take it back to Mike. Mike, now I know you are involved with the Proprietors Cup, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was there. I got all the email updates that I'm sure everybody else and their brother got from Billy, who worked extremely hard on this event, and he wanted to live stream it, and he asked us to come out, and we did.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's actually probably a great way to kind of end our podcast here with a really fantastic question that kind of summarizes a lot of what Internet broadcasting is all about. Tell us a little bit about the Inside Bowling live streaming of events, how that come about, how do you do it, and, what has your response been to showing bowling the way you do?
Well, the live streaming started with a laptop walking pair to pair using the webcam that's on the laptop itself at a bowling tournament in St. Louis. And we had about 15 people watching and chatting about how I was bowling pair to pair, which is pretty ridiculous. And then then it evolved into someone in St. Louis wanting to bowl high-stakes action against anybody that was on Inside Bowling's website. There was a guy posting that I'll bowl anybody for, $100 a game, $5 a pin. So they got matches through the forum on the website. It was called the High Stakes Bowling Thread. And Lindenwood University students would line up to bowl this guy. And I decided to set up a camera, a webcam, and I bought a small podcasting kit, and we shared one microphone, and we broadcasted this on a pair of lanes in between while leagues were going on. And all these Lindenwood kids started promoting it on their Facebook pages. Hey, watch right now. Brett Cunningham's bowling, for $100 a game, 10-game match right now, live on InsideBowling.com. And we Ustreamed it, and it was unbelievable. I mean, we get 300 people watching. I think our third telecast, Lucas Wiseman was in the chat from USBC. And I just want to take a minute to say that everything that they've done at USBC, Pete Treadwell, Matt Lawson, all those guys, Lucas, everybody I'm forgetting about, too, they do a great job with their webcast. It really inspired me as someone who sits online and watches what everybody's doing, the IAB with DeAndre and Belmo with their videos, and Nick Smith, Brunsnick, the things he's done over the years. All that stuff I think is really cool. Call me a nerd, call me what you want, but I thought it's all been really cool for bowling. So as we were streaming these high-stakes matches, it just kept getting better and better. And then as Brian Burkhart came on board, who does all the weapon development now, who is the secret weapon, so to speak, he kept pushing to do more with more camera shots, and let's put Black Magic cards in the back of a computer so we can do HD, and let's buy a $1,000 software package to switch cameras, and let's design PNGs to throw up on the screen to brand this thing, and let me write a picture like that card. So all those things really, really made it evolve. So our broadcasts, we actually have tabs with all the standings on the same screen. We have a chat room. We have multiple camera angles. It's in HD. And then we archive all of it on YouTube now. And the best thing about our broadcast is we feel like we are the most interactive online bowling channel, so to speak, out there, because we're so interactive with our fans and our chat. And it's really just a really cool thing to do. And I love sitting in that booth interacting with everyone. And at the Proprietors Cup, we saw Jason Couch against Shannon Polowski and Brandon Novak. And you can go find that webcast on YouTube, along with all our other ones that we've done. And we get such great people that sit in the booth with us. We get like Dave Lodka, we get guys like Matt McNeil, Rob Gottschall, Tom Hess. All these guys have sat in the booth for hours. David O'Sullivan, and just talked bowling, along with myself and Doug and other folks that help us out. So we try to do it the best way that we can. We get great guests to sit in there with us, and we talk bowling, and we answer the fans in the chat, and we just have a great time with it. And you'll find things that will get distracting to maybe the diehard bowler, such as Jeff Riggles trying to eat a voodoo pizza that's going to set his mouth on fire in under 10 minutes at the 11thframe.com Open that we did, to talking about football spreads for an hour in the morning block of a Sunday tournament. It's just crazy. And we just go with it, and there's no two times you'll listen to it that it'll ever be the same. And I must say that it's so enjoyable to see people at 1 o'clock in the morning be in the chat, and then when we fire it up at 7 o'clock the next morning, the same people are in the chat. And there was one night that there were 20 people in the chat overnight talking bowling, and they were still there when we fired it up the next morning.
Well, I'll say this for sure. When we get going with the Laughlin Cup, we're going to have to figure out a way to get you out to Laughlin to start streaming our tournament here in a couple of years once we start growing. How's that sound?
Yeah, that's
there you go.
Great. I'll tell you right now that I'm being bombarded with requests. Tournament organizations such as the ABT, Brad Edelman and his group, Woody Dema at the Boot Hill tournament. We're streaming our very first collegiate tournament this weekend in Muncie, Indiana. It's Ball State's first ever event that they're having with their young college bowling program. So Brett Cunningham from Lindenwood University, just removed from there, still goes there from New York. He's going with me to stream the event this weekend. It's Saturday and Sunday, 40 games of Baker, and we'll be on there broadcasting this weekend. So we plan on going back to the Proprietors Cup and, of course, our InsideBowling.com events. We have a holiday doubles tournament, which is going to be December 28th through the 30th in Cahokia, Illinois. We should have over 100 doubles teams with names such as last year, Parker Bone came out and bowled and sat in the booth for a while. Pete Weber bowls, Mike Wolf, Jeff Carter, Jody Westner. Several great bowlers from the Midwest will be part of this thing.
Well, it definitely sounds like one heck of an event. I wish for sure that we would be able to get out to a couple of these tournaments. I know Eric would probably still have definitely a stake in bowling a few of these. What do you think, Eric?
Oh, you never know. It just depends. But yeah, they sound fantastic. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's quite a hike, but it would be great to have you here, Eric. I'm sure you can dominate some of these things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can. We'll see. You know, like I said, there's a lot of great stuff coming out next year, and I wouldn't mind attending to give it a shot.
I'll change a few of those pattern loads from 2 to 2 to like 5 to 2. How about that? Would that get you out?
That's okay. Do what you got to do there, Chief. whatever it takes.
Just remember, if we decide to bowl a tournament together, load up the oil on the left-hand side of the lane because I don't want to look bad if I'm bowling with Eric. So.
Oh my God. No, I think you better put the funnel to the pocket on the right so Dusty can at least get to the pocket. I don't want him to cry. Give him the pocket, for crying out loud.
Bumpers up, lane 34.
There you go.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to take us to the end of the show. I want to first off say thank you again to Mike Flanagan from InsideBowling.com for joining us tonight. Really a fantastic guest. Mike, thank you so much for sitting in with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for taking my abuse, Eric and Dustin. I appreciate it.
No problem. That's what we're here for. We're abuse takers.
Absolutely, we are. Also want to remind everyone that if you have not had a chance, please check out the new BowlingEvolved.com, recently redesigned by our very own Tyler Hunsaker. Really a great little website now. Also, the Bowling Evolved app is available for iPhone and smartphone accessories. That's something that's definitely unique. I know he's put a lot of time and thought into that. Also, if you have any question, comments, ideas, or you got more hate mail for Eric or even myself, because, once in a while I get it too, please send us an email at bowlingevolved@gmail.com. We're happy to read everything you send in. But, ladies and gentlemen, for Mike Flanagan and Eric Forkel, I've been Dustin J. Markowitz. Have a great night.
Good night.